Well, my friend, you and I both knew this video was going to be coming, but as of when, the time is nigh. So, about 4 weeks ago, I released my top 10 most overrated weapons in TF2, in my personal opinion video. And boy howdy, nobody understood the premises of the video. It was a deliberately grumpy, deliberately exaggerated, deliberately angry video, basically talking about certain weapons I hate, the playstyles attached to them, and the players. In fact, I explained all of this in the intro and the outro, and even left timestamps in the comments explaining that I explained this, yet nobody seemed to understand the premise. It really was the Marmite of my channel, as surprisingly a lot of people agreed with my takes, and that was quite humbling, but the overwhelming majority did not. So, we're back at it again with my top 10 most underrated weapons in all of TF2. Bear in mind, this is 100% opinionated, there are no facts here whatsoever, and unlike the last one, this is not a deliberately grumpy video. I'm going to be talking about things I love and why I love them. Within my community, this is a highly anticipated video, and I'm very sorry it took so long to deliver. If you would like to watch the video that you clicked on, you may skip to this timestamp here to avoid all of the disclaimers. I do have a lot of disclaimers and a lot of lengthy ranty ones, so if you'd like to stay tuned for that just because you love my lyrical British voice, I'd be very, very happy, but if you don't, do skip to this timestamp here. So, I'm going to go over it again, as I did in the last video, but it seems most people did not listen. The word opinion doesn't hold as much weight as it really should. You will disagree with me on these takes, and that's absolutely fine. In the last video, I dared to criticise the precious gunboats or the snowflakes that used the Tide Turner, and they let me know in full force. However, at the same time, disagreeing with me is a completely healthy thing. But when you weaponise that disagreement into harassment, that is not a good thing. So I'd like to drop this little disclaimer into here. You may disagree with me, that is absolutely fine. You may voice your disagreement, that is absolutely fine. But don't be a knob about it. And if this is the first one in this series you've watched and you haven't watched the previous one, I do recommend you go check it out. The quality is a little varying here and there, however my points still stand. The whole idea of it was me criticising overly used and overly popular weapons. Yet people seem to not really understand that. It's either everyone who watches this channel is an idiot, or everyone who has the ability to comment who watches this channel is an idiot. I'm not too sure, but I love you all the same. And with those very lengthy and wet disclaimers out the way, I'm very sorry. Let's just get started with the video. I'm very excited for this one. Number 10. We start this list out with an absolute classic when it comes to underrated weapons. Number 10, the Cleaner's Carbine. Now, the reason why I like the SMGs is because I understand their purpose. Their purpose isn't to get kills or deal damage, it's to poke your enemy out of your close range and get them into mid to long range so you can finish them up with a headshot. And the Cleaner's Carbine does that perfectly well, with the addition of having mini crits. Now, I understand why would you give yourself only 8 seconds of mini crits when you can give your entire team's worth of 8 seconds of mini crits when, using something like the Girati. But then again, I find that fairly inconsistent as you have to wait for it to recharge, and a Cleaner's Carbine is always there in case you need to poke someone out of your own range. So the Cleaner's Carbine, I think it's really good, yet at the same time I fully understand why other people do not like it, nor use it. Number 9. Long-term viewers of this channel will know that I have an obsessive love with number 9, the Airstrike. Now, the reason why I love this thing is because it offers up a much more interesting playstyle than your normal soldier gameplay. Your normal soldier gameplay involves jumping onto a roof, jumping to a health pack, that kind of thing, but the Airstrike involves jumping and staying jumping. Or flying, whatever you want to call it. There are some limitations to this playstyle, of course, the main one being the massive wall that is between you and fun that is Sniper, but I still love this thing regardless. Load into a payload game, load into a control points game with a nice large open map, fly above your enemies and rain hell upon them. It is just incredible, and you're even rewarded for doing so with an increased clip size. I love the Airstrike. Yes, it needs a buff. Yes, it's not the greatest weapon out there, but that's not the criteria for this list. Number 8. To all the engineer mains watching, I'd like to ask you a couple questions. How would you like to have infinite metal and health at all times? How would you like the ability to move between the spawn room and the battlefield at will? And how would you like the ability to build much cheaper teleporters? Yes, that's right, number 8, the Eureka Effect is one of my favourite weapons in the entire game, hands down, purely because of the options it lends to you as an engineer. The ability to move from combat to the spawn room and back again would be overpowered on any class, but especially so the one that has a limited resource mechanic, of which an infinite amount can be found in the spawn room. The playstyles this weapon offers are so diverse that there is no one correct way to use it, nor is there one most fun way. You can use it to just swap between the battlefield and the spawn to get an infinite amount of health, ammo and all that kind of stuff. You can use it to set up sneaky teleporters to get your entire team behind enemy lines, or you can just use it for a bit of trolling. Again, there is no correct way to play this weapon because the playstyles it offers vary so much in quality, fun and everything, entirely depending on what you're feeling like doing. Yes, the downsides this thing offers are pretty harsh. Only gaining 80% metal from all sources, unless it's the dispenser or the spawn cabinet, is a terrible, terrible thing. However, that is completely balanced by the incentive of this weapon, which is to teleport back to spawn to get an infinite amount of metal to begin with, that I honestly don't find this to be as much big of a downside as it is on paper. Combining silly with fun, sexy with practical, the Eureka effect has it all, and I'm honestly quite glad that people don't use it as much as they should have, because, well, just imagine if Gibbous engineers discovered this thing. Nests would be unstoppable. Number 7. Every now and then, some random TF2 weapons get a huge resurgence in players. This could be due to something like a YouTuber making a video on them, or people just discovering they're generally quite good. And me personally, I'm tired of waiting for number 7, the shortstop, to get its go in the spotlight. The shortstop is underpowered, but that does not mean it is bad. The whole idea of a mid-range scout is quite an interesting one, honestly, and we have various other weapons that support this case, like for example the Rap Assassin and the Sandman having the moonshot mechanic. But then again, nothing will be quite as fun or quite as powerful as running up to your enemy, dealing loads and loads of damage, the dopamine sensors go off, and getting out to tell the tale. But then again, that doesn't mean the shortstop can be a blast in of itself. If there is a situation in which you have an abundance of crits, use this thing, trust me on that one. You can combine this thing with the Criticola, even though I dare mention that, but usually the best place to use the shortstop is on Halloween maps, with that of Crumpkins and things like that. The most common counter you'll find on strange shortstops is kills on Halloween, and that's the reason why, in case you're wondering. So I love the shortstop. I think the idea of a mid-range scout could be quite fun, but combine this thing with crits and you will never go back to the stock scattergun again. Number 6. Would you believe me if I said I'm currently 4.5 hours into making this video and we're only at the 6th position on this list? Anyway, number 6 is the Back Scratcher. This weapon has to have the single most random combination of stats and designs on a weapon I've ever seen before. Plus 25% attack, plus 50% healing from health packs, and minus 75% healing from medics and other sources. Why all these stats are attached to a bloodied garden rake I don't know, but I'm not complaining in the slightest. Now, I previously expressed my disinterest and hatred towards tryhard roamers in previous videos, and even in this one too, yet using this thing is probably the closest I'd ever come to that bracket. This thing encourages more of an independent pyro playstyle, which is pretty good, it's pretty fun honestly. As well, this thing pairs incredibly well with the back burner, as you can get behind enemy lines, steal their health packs to heal up, and then deal massive amounts of critical damage. Obviously, forgetting you have this thing equipped and then bumping into a medic when you really need them is quite a terrible thing, and it happens quite a lot to me personally. But then again, the tryhard roamer playstyle this thing incentivizes actually works compared to something like the gunboats. You get a lot more benefits, and it's a lot more fun. Go ahead and fight me in the comments on that one. I'm not going to read them. Number 5. So my opinion of the stock knife is a lot like my opinion on the stock wrench. Every single unlock you can possibly get in the game is better than it. The unlocks that the spy knives have and the wrenches have such pitiful downsides compared to their amazing upsides that there is no reason to ever use the stock one whatsoever. And to me, this is no better exemplified than by number 5, the Spicicle. This weapon has basically no downsides. The turning victims into Ice Sting is not a downside. You can look up into the kill feed at any point to see if there's an enemy spy on the team, or even if one's dead and is respawning. This is not a downside like it pretends to be, but rather just a nice cosmetic feature. And the other downside this weapon supposedly has is the 15-second cooldown for when you lose your knife in a fire. Well, you see, this knife can not only be replenished by the stock cabinet, but also by ammo packs. You get a ridiculous amount of your knife back from ammo packs. Yes, it makes sense that you can't get them from, say, dispensers, but just the sheer amount is absurd. And since you're a spy, you're always going to be looking for ammo packs anyway, for cloak, or when you're behind the lines, or anything like that. So, you know, it's just better. Why would you use the stock knife when this thing exists? Hey, don't cut me off. Number 4. So, if you've made it this far into the video, I'm going to assume that A, you're watching this content purely because of me, fat chance, or B, your main hasn't appeared yet and you're wondering where it is. But for those of you who are watching the content for me, you'll know that I have a good friend called Abel, who I'm actually doing a video with in the upcoming future, so look out for that. But regardless, me and Abel originally bonded over our shared love for number 4, the quick fix. As far as definitions go, the quick fix is the definition of definitions of underrated. Now, as to why it's only 4th place, I'll explain in a minute, but first I should explain the 2 major downsides quick fix has. One of them being less overheal. Now, less overheal is incredibly important on classes like Sniper or Scout that die in most hits and therefore desperately need that extra bit of juice. And the other downside this weapon has is that its Ubercharge is not very good. However, I'm completely fine with the Ubercharge being a bit shoddy here and there, because the absurd 40% increase in healing rate that this thing gives on top of a 10% increase in Ubercharge rate is just amazing. Now, as I said earlier, I fully understand as to why people don't use this thing. Those 2 downsides make or break games, and they are incredibly harsh. Whether they're enough to balance out a 40% increase in healing rate, I'm not sure. Debate in the comments. But regardless, I really do think this thing is amazing. This is the pub medigun, and since I'm a casual player, this is often my medigun of choice. Now, as I said earlier, this is the definition of definitions of underrated, and probably would have been number 1 on this list. However, the next 3 weapons to come, literally nobody uses. People, up until now, have at least used all of these weapons on this list at least once, and you'll occasionally see them in pubs. But from here on out, we're entering the unknown territory of TF2 weapons. Number 3. Okay, I suppose it is a bit cheeky of me to suggest that nobody uses these weapons when number 3, the Claymore, is one of the most used, least used weapons in the game, if that makes any sense. This weapon is used by 2 types of people, those who don't know how it works and those who do know how it works, and while that might sound like a pretty dumb statement, I think you and I both know what I'm talking about. This weapon is either being used by the free-to-play demo who just got it from a random unlock and therefore thinks it's instantly great because it's a sword, or it's being used by the edgelord demo tide-turning, worshipping, toe-sucking, trimping god who, just needs clips for his frag montage. Yet the secret 3rd type of person who uses this thing is the Hybrid Knight. These are the ones you want to be terrified of. Giving an extra 0.5% increase in charge allows these guys to close distances you wouldn't dream of otherwise. The Hybrid Knight is a versatile and dangerous subclass, because they have not only excellent explosive long-range to mid-range damage, but also incredibly powerful mid-range to short-range damage with the extra charge time this sword wields. So I love this thing so much. Hybrid Knight is my preferred choice of playstyle, yet at the same time I still think there are 2 weapons on this list that are much more underrated than this thing. Number 2. So I don't really have a main these days. I used to main Pyro when I was a wee lad, but these days I'd honestly consider the closest thing I have to a main being Heavy. I have the most fun with Heavy, I have a lot of hours on Heavy, and that's purely because I know exactly how he works and which weapons to use in which situations. Yet time and time again I find myself defaulting to the same ones. The Natasha for the primary, purely because I hate dealing with scouts, the Gloves of Gloving Urgently for the extra movement speed, and... Wait, what? Yes, that's right my dear viewer, I am not joking you, number 2 is the Lon'qudor bar. So you don't need me to tell you that Heavy is probably not the single best class in the game, and you also don't need me to tell you that Heavy's strongest counter sniper is probably the best class in the game. Yet, what if I were to tell you you could have an extra 50 health whenever you need it for 30 seconds every 10 seconds? I never would have dreamed that the Lon'qudor bar would end up being my favourite Heavy secondary and my favourite Heavy lunchbox item. As a, well, I suppose I'll just call myself a Heavy main from here on out, but as a Heavy main, the utility this thing offers is invaluable. It allows you to survive so much more, get into combat, get out of combat easier, and even having that little bit of extra health when you're caught with your pants down eating your sandwich is just great. The reason why most people don't use this weapon is that they just always assumed it to be bad, and they never realised that Jungle Inferno actually turned it into a powerhouse of lunchboxes. Nobody understands how important 50 extra health is on the slowest class in the game. How many shots you can survive, how many bullets or swords or anything you can survive with that extra 50 health. It might seem like a measly amount, but I promise you it's not. There is no single cause within TF2 I am more passionate about than preaching the word of the Lon'qudor path. But if that's the case, why is it only number 2 on this list? Well, you see, just like last time, we've gone through the 9 classes and picked one of their weapons to submit as the most underrated of their category. Yet, also just like last time, I've picked my single choice for the most underrated weapon in the entire game. It's not a cop-out, it's not going to be something like the golden frying pan, it is a genuine unlock, and I truly believe it doesn't get the love that it deserves. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining me on this journey, and let's just get into number 1. Number 1. How did this video get to over 15 minutes long? How have I currently spent 7 hours making this thing and I'm nowhere near finished? I really don't understand. I've poured my heart and soul talking about weapons that I love, talking about the playstyles attached to them, and talking about the players who use them. And I don't regret that in the slightest. I know this is probably going to be one of my longer videos, but I really don't care. I've had a great time making this. But for now, my dear viewer, this video must come to an end and I must announce my number 1 take for the single most underrated weapon in the entirety of TF2. Like I said earlier, it's not a cop-out and I truly believe in this cause. Number 1 is the Sydney Sleeper. Higher than thee, holier than thou, this weapon suffers from the Locust Bar syndrome in which nobody realises this is a fantastic weapon. Allow me to fill you in with some stats, dear viewer. A fully charged sniper body shot deals 150 damage, and before Jungle Inferno, this thing used to not be able to headshot, which is why everyone considered it to be bad. However, nowadays, it can headshot. A headshot from this thing will deal a mini crit damage, enough to kill any class in the game, besides the fat bastards. So, if this thing has the ability to one-shot headshot any other class in the game, and it has the ability to coat them in Jurati, why does nobody use this thing? I really don't understand as to why nobody uses this thing. And the only answer I could possibly think of is that just nobody realises how strong this weapon is. But maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's something we should keep to ourselves. I can't wait to not read all the sniper mains complaining about, oh, you know, because it's mini crit, a damage ramp up or something, you have to spend more time charging. I don't care. You can extinguish teammates from across the map, and you can not be a selfish bastard for once and actually help your team out by Jurating enemies you know you can't take down in the adequate time. Imagine that, a sniper being useful to his team. The Sydney Sleeper is the single most underrated weapon in my personal opinion in the entirety of TF2, and it makes me want to play Sniper, and Sniper is currently my least played class and my least favourite to play. Everything holy and everything not, I can't believe this video ended up almost being 20 minutes long. I'm really sorry about that. But take this as a note that I enjoy talking about things more that I love than I do talking about things that I don't. I really don't want to make the outro too long this time. This is just going to be the end of the video from now on. But I just quickly want to thank, okay, I still don't know how to say his name. Seriamon? I don't know. He gave me a shout out and I've been chatting to him recently and he's a very nice guy, so his channel will be linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe if you've made it this far. Thank you very much everyone. Go use these weapons and I will see you later down the sunny road.